Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you. Hello and welcome to Things You Can't Unhear. I am Maritza Barone. Now, for the last 96 episodes on this show together, I've noticed how much our listeners have really enjoyed hearing conversations from psychics, mediums, and spiritual healers. They have been some of our most downloaded, shared, and commented on episodes of the show. So today I wanted to welcome Isabeau or Beau Maxwell to the show. Beau is an intuitive author, medium, and the founder of the Sage Method, which we will learn about in this conversation. For the past 15 years, Beau has been known for helping people connect to their authentic, natural, and intuitive abilities. What she does is help people who have passed to cross over to the other side and release spirits stuck in the in-between. We discuss how we as souls and as physical beings fit into the web of life, why souls get stuck in the in-between, what we experience as our highest selves once we do pass, and how the transition of that lifetime becomes complete. Beau was originally a skeptic, raised without spirituality in her life, and she experienced a series of events which opened her intuition, and she stepped headfirst into spiritual realms. So let's welcome Beau Maxwell. Welcome, Beau Maxwell, to Things You Can't Unhear. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you for having me.
I'm so pumped to have this chat with you today. And we talked briefly before we hit record, and I said that our listeners absolutely love hearing from spiritual mediums on this show. It's probably the most downloaded types of interviews that we have. And the comments that I get from people after they listen to these interviews on the show are just amazing. So when an email popped up with your name on it, I was like, absolutely, let's have this chat. I've been exploring what you do and the amazing, incredible work that you get to experience. Or would you even call it work? Get to experience every single day. So I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. I wouldn't call it work either at this point. It's just who I am now, and I love it.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to dig into it. Now, where are you joining us from? Because you have an interesting setup at the moment, don't you?
Yeah, about a year ago, actually just over a year ago, my partner and I packed up the apartment, bought a big old RV, and we've been full-time RVing for a year. It's been an adventure, especially for a medium, because every location in the country here in the United States, this is true everywhere, is that there's different energies. And so as a medium, to be so open and step into the different energies has been really wild. And I've loved every minute of it. Right now, I'm on the on the East Coast of Florida.
Wow, you're so right. I didn't even think about the changing of energies because I've moved as well during the pandemic and all of what's going on around the world right now. And there definitely was a change of just energetic experiences with the people and just how they have dealt with what's gone on and what experiences, what trauma they've had. So, and what rules there are. So everything seems to be quite fascinating when you really look at it like that. What have you found? I mean, I'd love to know from what you've seen recently from moving around, where there's been a lot more positivity and where there's been a lot more negativity and why.
I have been struck by this. And I have to tell you, no one's asked me this question yet. And I absolutely love this. You were so amazing. I've been really struck. And because going across the country, we've got 50 states. You can go through one or two states in a day. It's not like they're all, massive in size. And each state really handled everything that was going on in the last year and a half with Corona very differently. And each town is so different as well. And I was really stunned by that. You get used to your environment and you get used to the people, and all the way down to how you're welcomed in each place. Not even good and bad. Is the welcome like a slow welcome? Do they need time to say hello to you and get to know you? Or do they run right up and hug you? And you're like, okay. So it's been really interesting. I'll be very direct. There's been pockets of hate, and that's been very difficult to walk through. There have been pockets of regrowth, and then there's been areas like Vermont where you see community in action, and it's powerful and beautiful and moving. So there's a vibrational energy that goes with each of those as well. And I'm not just visiting, I'm actually living in that space. So to live in that space and to learn, okay, I really need to manage my energy here, but in this other place, I don't necessarily need to manage my energy. I can just open up and just take it in. So it's really been fascinating as somebody that works in the energy fields to go from state to state, from areas of, and it has actually nothing to do with money. That's just my opinion on the wealth of a city or a town. It really has to do with the community and the belief structure that's set into that one particular area. And you're either vibrating really high or really low, and you have to adjust to that so it doesn't affect yourself personally.
We've had a very similar experience in Australia. Every state, for the first time ever, is being run independently, and new rules and new energies. And we're seeing how people are managing things differently in just different states, which is so strange for all of us Australians, because we've always been a united front, one Australia, not seven Australias. And it's really hard to really come to terms with over this time. But for you, I love the fact that you're in your RV and you can move when that energy feels stagnant or dark and move on. You can go somewhere lighter.
We've pulled into places where we were going to be there for a week, and the very next day we said we need to go.
Yeah.
And we've left and found somewhere else.
Yeah.
And but then there's been other places where I'm literally right now on a river on the very edge of Florida, 50 feet out my back door are dolphins, swimming and feeding.
Yeah.
And so I only get a week here, and all I can think of is, can I stay for a month, please? So, but the places that are heavier, that are more weighed down, we've actually left. We've picked up, and I've said to my partner, I can't stay here. Like, this is too painful for my energy field. And so I can't stay here. And one state right next to another state, handling it completely differently. Now I have students, and actually one of my employees is in Australia, and I have a lot of students in Australia. This has been my first really getting to know Australians in my lifetime. And it's been through COVID. And I've heard over and over the strong community, taking care of your elders, that type of stuff. And we struggle with a little bit of that here.
It's so, you talk about being able to make decisions and move around as you please. And it's, for me, all about freedom. That's what we're lacking at the moment, is the ability to make those changes when we want to make those changes, and have the freedom to be able to do it and move between states and go into different communities. And that's what we haven't been able to do here. And it's getting to a lot of people, but hopefully we'll be able to move on from that soon. I want to get into your amazing career as a professional medium. Can you tell us how it started? Because I've heard you haven't always been a believer.
Oh, that's an understatement. So I was a skeptic. I am a Taurus. 1 + 1 is 2. I have a math degree from college, and with a minor in science. So it's for me, spirituality wasn't on the table any way, shape, or form. I wasn't like an active skeptic. I just didn't have that in my equation. So it was 2005 when my grandmother passed away, and she was some distance from me, so I couldn't be with her. I was able to say my goodbyes over the phone so she could hear me right before she passed, but I wasn't able to be by her side. So I hang up the phone, and within an hour or two, she showed up in my living room, literally showed up in my living room in spirit form. She was about 70% solid. Oddly, she was standing sideways. She turned her head and winked and smiled at me and then disappeared. And I remember flying. I mean, I literally physically flew back into the wall. I was so scared because this was something that wasn't real. And the only really concept I understood was, scary movies, ghost stories, things like this. And I guess it didn't matter that it was her. I was still so frightened. But shortly after that, my grief took over, to be very honest. And I really, really wanted it to be her. So I had to step into the possibility, is this you or is this me? And that just opened, the floodgates. It was actually the next morning when my husband woke up and said to me, I had this very realistic dream of your grandma, and she was wearing that blue button-down shirt of hers. And I just was stunned
Wow.
because that's what she was wearing when I saw her. And I went, oh, you sneaky lady, because she's cheeky, And I said, oh, you sneaky lady, if this is really you, you're really pushing these boundaries here. Okay, let's explore this. And so I was such a skeptic that I didn't know anyone in the spiritual realms. So I hunted down a Tai Chi instructor that I knew. And I remember saying to him, he's such a lovely man. I said, you're the strangest person I know. Can you help me?
And that's a compliment.
It was, yes. And he wrapped his arms around me. He was one of the nicest men I've ever met. And he taught me pendulum work, where you can swing an object to get a yes or no answer intuitively. So I'm using that. Months go by. I'm sensing that she's around me. I'm getting the rushes. I'm getting a couple yes and no answers when I sit down with it, but nothing concrete. And months into this, I said, okay, I'm raising small children. I need to either figure out if this is real, or I need to get help with my grief. I can't keep doing this. And I said that to her out loud. A few hours later, I was driving in the car. Now I'm talking about her as she was there, because she was, but I was driving in the car, and she came through. I could feel the rush go through me. So I pulled over, and it was such a strong rush. And I was very good at playing 20 questions. So I spent 20 minutes doing yes and no answers until I finally got a message from her that in essence said, my mom had a financial issue with business or with herself, and she was going to ask for help, but that I wouldn't help her, a friend would. And I said, okay, this is enough, that if it doesn't happen, I can go seek some help. Maybe an hour or two later, my mom called and said, hun, I just need to move money from one bank to another for like 24 hours. Can you do that for me? I said, sure. So I went to my bank and I got some cash, drove the cash to her bank, and said, okay, well, my mom's a business person, so this has happened. So maybe, but the second I pulled into her bank, before I could go in and deposit the money, she called me back and said, hey, don't worry about it. A friend of mine just helped me out.
Wow.
And
how is that?
I wept. I sat there kind of shaking for like an hour, and I've never looked back. That was really how I opened up.
That is incredible. And do you still get visits from your grandmother to the day?
Oh, yes. I was able to take those goosebumps and the yes and no's. I was able to work with my first spiritual guide. His name was Big Dog. I was able to work with him for a period of time to really hone my intuition. So now I can see her, I can have conversations with her and such. She's not always around. I tend to find that she's around a little bit more often when I either need a little coddling or a kick in the tail. One of those two things is when she usually shows up.
I love how she was the trigger to you making this your life and doing this on a day-to-day basis and being so damn good at it. It's beautiful, actually. So I really wanted to know the cycle of life. So when we pass, what actually happens? And Are these souls and these spirits, ghosts, whatever we want to call them, are they around us permanently, or do they go somewhere else and reincarnate? I mean, I think I know what goes on, but I'd love to hear from you what you see and what you've heard.
Well, we can start with the big answer, which is everything is in the same location and all time is at the same point. So there's no time, there's no space. But I know, I mean, but once we say that, the conversation's done. So I like to discuss it in the sense of form, understanding that it's not really the form, but it's an analogy to help us understand it. So for me, before we even come down, on the other side, I see it as a multidimensional spider web. And at every intersection of that spider web is a soul. Now, all the souls that are close to you on the web, that's your soul group. And the soul group comes down with you in a lifetime. The ones even closest to you are your soulmates. It's why when someone close to you, when something happens to someone close to you, it hits you emotionally. But when something happens to you from someone you don't know, it doesn't. It's because those closest to you on the spider web, when the web shakes, you feel it. And that's really how we're all connected. Now, in that one pivotal point where you reside on this web, that is your higher self. And if you can picture it as a ball of light, when we have a life, we take a chunk of that ball of light out and we throw it down here, put it into a body so it can have a lifetime. When we're here, it's not all of our higher self. It's a piece of that higher self. And all of these lifetimes, in essence, are happening at the same time, because the only one that's on linear time is us in human form. Our higher self isn't. So if the higher self isn't in linear time, then all of our lifetimes are literally just happening in a moment. It's like they're bouncing marbles. They bounce them down, they come right back up. And it's a joyful experience. And then people say, well, then why would we do that? I've come to learn that we do it because we want to have experiences that are based in linear time. And you can't have that without Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We can't have anticipation, excitement, surprise, or fear. And that's what our higher self wants. Now, linear time happens in that one lifetime. So in essence, we do have multiple lives, but they're really all happening at the same time, if that makes sense.
It's the very much the sliding doors type of situation with Gwyneth Paltrow, that movie. That's how I really imagine things rolling out. So would you agree with that? You've seen that film? It's the same person, but having different outcomes, or is it something different where it's a different soul into a different person having different lifetimes? This is
it's all in essence, we're always the same soul and we're always connected on one level. So this is two levels, really. On one level, we're having very different lifetimes in different times, different locations. On another level, every choice you make ends up being another lifetime. So if you say yes to something, you're going to go in that direction. If you say no to something, you're going to go in that direction. So it's really infinite. It's just this web and this maze and this path of beautiful experiences. It's like a huge candy bowl of experiences for our higher self. And we thoroughly enjoy it as well. Not all the time. Some of these lifetimes are tough, but in the end, we get to actually feel love in conjunction with anticipation or hope or things like that are on linear time.
I knew I loved those books when I was younger for a reason. Those choose your own endings.
Yes, I loved those.
It's like, which way do I want to go? What do I want to happen? And that's almost like what you're describing now. It's quite amazing.
And when you had mentioned what happens like with spirits and ghosts when crossover and such. So if we just talk about one lifetime, when we are here, we have three bodies. We have the physical body, we've got the programming body, which is our human mind, and then we have the energetic body, which is that soul, that spirit, that chunk of your higher self. And when we pass away, we let go of the physical body, but the other two bodies go into the in-between. So when somebody is going through the in-between, think of someone, as I'm describing this, think of stories that you've heard of near-death experiences. When someone's going through the in-between, they still have their energetic body. That's that piece that's returning back to the higher self, but they also still have the programming body, which is that human mind, which is based in linear time. What I'm saying is in the in-between, we're the exact same person we were, but without a physical body. So and it's an automatic, it's a loving process, it's automatic, but there are people who do stop the transition, whether they're scared, angry, there's usually some sort of a fear-based reason, but they will stop that process. And that's when you hear about spirits becoming stuck. And that's where it helps to, help them cross over. When they hit the other side, sounds like a collision, but when they get to that other side, they shed that linear time and that programming body, returning back to just that energetic body.
Why do people get stuck in that in between? I know you mentioned anger and frustration and other emotions that they're still holding on to, but why do they get stuck? How do they get stuck? And how is this what you do? Do you help them get through to the other side by maybe completing the cycle, discussing what they need to get off their chest with other loved ones who are still here? I'd love to hear.
This is exactly this is my main job. This is my, I guess you could say one of my reasons for being here is to help spirits cross over. It's very psychological, because in essence, really, it's not even physically bound anymore. It's really mentally bound. And so I've seen so many reasons. I've seen somebody who was intoxicated and thought that they were on a bad trip and didn't know that they were past. I've seen, I met an atheist who was the sweetest man ever. He looked lost. And I was literally walking down the street. I wasn't looking for him. And I just in my head said, "Hey, are you okay?" And he turned kind of stunned. And he's like, "You can hear me?" And I'm like, "Yep." And he said, "It's supposed to be done." And I said, "Tell me more." And he goes, "None of this is real." And I kind of knew, okay, this is an atheist. And I said, "Okay, that's all right. It's going to be done, And he goes, "Well, should I just go through that door or something like that?" And I said, "That's a good idea." And then he crossed and I was like, okay, he'll figure it out. But, it's, all you got to do is love them. All you got to do is love them. Most people that are stuck out of fear of something that they did, fear of going to hell, fear of what if, or fear of missing out on a portion of their kid's life or something. Most everyone, they're stuck on fear. And it's not that I actually cross them over. It's that I get them to kind of loosen up that thinking, because the only way you can remain stuck, for the most part, there's always small exceptions, but for the most part, the only way you can remain stuck in something so magnetic, this magnetic pull, is you have to really stay focused on one issue. So if you can get a spirit to start thinking about who's waiting for you on the other side, what are some possibilities? What did you do for a living? What's some of your passions? If you can get them thinking about that, it kind of loosens it up, and then they continue on with their transition. And like you hear with near-death experiences, the closer you get to the other side, the more it's just pure love. And you don't want to go back. So that's really my job. And I remember when I learned that was my job, I was really scared and intimidated and a little disappointed that I wasn't just going to chat with my grandma for the rest of my life. And I say that jokingly, but I remember my guide showing me this vision of a large building. It was like an apartment building, skyscraper, something like this. And it was on an island, and people were like falling out of the windows and then trying to swim across the water. And I was like, that's frightening. And I looked down, and as dramatic as it was so dramatic at the moment, but I saw my kids reach up with their hands. And he said, "Wouldn't you help your kids?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, every single person is someone's child." And I was like, oh, I get it now. Okay. All right. Because I was scared of the bad guy or that thing that goes bump in the night. And he's like, no, everyone is someone's child, someone's brother, someone's sister, someone's soul group. And why wouldn't you help them go home? Why wouldn't you help them get out of that? And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
So amazing. I've got so many questions popping up in my head, left, right, and center after hearing what you just said then. So first, I just wanted to ask this one. So you did mention before that your grandmother, she's crossed over now. And for all the souls who are stuck and then they cross over, they can still communicate with you and us when they have crossed over.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So people can communicate crossed over, not crossed over. And people ask, well, how do you know the difference? Very clear difference. Is there fear involved? Is there anger? Like, is there, judgment or anything connected with linear time, panic, anything like that? Then that's usually somebody that's not crossed over.
Right.
Yeah.
Positive and negative souls. Is there such a thing? Is there good and bad? Is there hell? Is there are there repercussions of doing bad things in our lives and getting to those pearly gates and being sent somewhere else, like we've been told many times in our lives?
Well, let's start with the hell question. I love that question because my answer is kind of not direct in that I personally don't witness or I have not experienced a version of hell. I've experienced the in-between.
Yeah.
And but I've also come to understand and compassionately love everyone's path choice, because some people are wired for a particular religion, and when they move forward with compassionate care for spirits or people living in that religion, then it works. So it's not one way is the right way, it's which way resonates with you so you can do the best work, if that makes sense. Me personally, I don't align with any particular religion, but I've seen powerful miracles and healing and things like that in different religions. So with that said, this is just my experience of it, that I have not personally experienced hell directly. What I do know is that I've never seen anything demonic. I've seen things that have tried to portray themselves as demonic. And that's always comical on a day that I'm like tired and a little irritable and don't have enough time in my brain to deal with it. Like, let's just stop playing games now. And can we just do what we need to do and go home? But that's that kind of maternal energy, I guess. I don't know. But I've experienced dark, and I've experienced things that were, really deep and stuff like that, but nothing with two horns.
Well, that's good to know.
When it when it comes to spirits being either good or bad, in the end, it's all good, because on the other side, there's really only one essence, which is love. So when someone comes down and does bad things, it's not that they're a bad soul or that they're evil. I also don't use that word. It's that they have taken on the task to play a role, and they're playing it really well. And because they're playing that role in this stage that we call Earth, everyone affected by that is going to have experiences that affects their role and their path as well. We're all just constantly affecting each other, and we have to have good or bad, or there's no bounce, there's no back and forth. And it can be really hard for people, especially when you have somebody really, really detrimental, a perpetrator, things like that. I cross over a lot of what people would call perpetrators or people that hurt people. And I have a history in my family of knowing a few of those growing up. And I also have a history of understanding that doesn't define them, that's their behavior, that's their reaction. It doesn't make it right, but that's their reaction to their own pain. So I kind of have that deep understanding of it, and I have the ability to love unconditionally somebody who does something wrong. Now, you can test me on that one day, have someone walk up to me and punch me in the face. I'm not going to love them in that moment. But, overall, I understand the concept of it. And this helps me to be able to set aside the judgment when I come across a spirit that's stuck in the in-between that's doing harm to others. It helps me to set aside the judgment so I can just kind of focus in on them and saying, okay, we're done. This is where we need to go. And it's because I love you, I'm going to help you. And that's really been my experience with it. There's no good or bad. I get one question very commonly. What about Hitler? Okay, so I think that's a great example because we all have a review process when we cross over. And in essence, think of the review process as a book, and every page in that book is something that you've experienced or done. When you review that page, you have to go through what you've done, experience it again. You have to experience it again in the shoes of the people that were affected, each person that was affected. So if 4 people were affected by this, you have to experience it 4 more times on how they felt, like in reality. And then you have to release it and go on to the next page. So every single person that was brutally murdered under Hitler needs to feel what that felt like, for their mothers, for their sisters, for their brothers. It's an intense process. For most of us, the review process is mostly good. We also get to review, the time we fell in love. And then we get to feel what it felt like for our partner to fall in love with us. So the review process is really the pivotal point when it comes to good or bad.
Fascinating. I think about regret too. When they're in these perpetrator souls in that in-between phase, is there a sense of regret, or are they just aware that that was the job that they needed to get done and then they're crossing over? Or is I'd love to know.
It's a great question. Very few have ever expressed to me that it's their job and their role and they were just playing a role. I don't think that they really understand that until they get to the other side, because it's so that human brain that I'm dealing with that they just don't get it. A small percentage of them, I have seen them just collapse in understanding of what they really did. And in that, they release and then they can cross over. But the majority of them, it's really saying, are you tired of feeling? It's getting them to see that they're doing this and they feel pain. So it's kind of turning their attention away from the people that they're causing harm to and reminding them how much pain they feel. And then helping them to understand there's a way out of that and that they don't have to feel it, and helping them understand that that's done and that they don't have to go forward. Also, one of my jobs many times has been to set serious energetic walls and boundaries between them and the people that are hurting. And when they can no longer hurt or affect living people in a negative way, they only have themselves to sit with. And that's very uncomfortable for someone. If they can't be lashing out and they're all alone and all they have to sit with is themselves, it gets very uncomfortable. And that's a great opportunity for me to say, we can remove this discomfort. You can remove this discomfort. Let's keep moving. And then they usually do. And they usually run. It's not usually no, I'm going to sit here. I say this with all love, but there is a cowardice to that type of abuse.
What procedure, what process do you use to put up those spiritual walls between these souls?
For me, it's just a visual. It's just a visual. I'm passionate about people taking care of their energetic bodies and their space. And I guess to answer this question, I'd love to tell you about that, because I think that would answer all of the questions, because it gives somebody instant tools to do all of this. And with these 3 bodies that I've been talking about, we were taught to take care of our physical body, but we were never taught to take care of that energetic body. And here's the kicker. The physical body is actually inside the energetic body. So the energetic body expands outside of our physical body. What this means is everything that happens to us, we experience in the energetic body before the physical body. Meaning, if someone yells at you, you're going to feel it in the energy body before it ever lands in your ears. And we don't know that. A lot of us do. Some people are really blessed with some really great parents that explain this to them, but very few. And this, as a result of not knowing this, we go through life and we pick up some energies that we don't necessarily want or need. And then we can struggle with feelings of sadness or stress and things like this. And when we start to take care of that energetic body, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. I've been teaching students for so many years, and I think that that's probably the one tool that stuns the people the most when they start using it. And the tool is called GCP, Ground, Clear, Protect. And it's in that order that you do it. Ground yourself to Mother Earth with any kind of visual you can, tree roots going into the earth, something like that. Clear yourself with a visual, like imagining water pouring all the way through you and washing away what you don't need. And then protect yourself with a bubble. So GCP, Ground, Clear, Protect. Protect yourself with a bubble around, and it's encapsulating your energetic body to take care of it. Now, it's not isolating, it's more a filter. And what you say to that bubble is you say, only let in what's for my highest good. Do not let in what's not for my highest good. And it blows my mind to watch people and myself. When I first experienced it, I was blown away. I was like feisty and, really rough around the edges when I first started my spiritual path. And I remember doing GCP. I grounded, I cleared, I put the bubble up. I said, don't let anything in that's not for my highest good. And then I went to go get a coffee at Starbucks. There was no parking. I made the decision to park in a parking lot that was closed down across the street. I made that decision, and I got out, and I saw a woman put a book down and get out of a parked car and come right at me, screaming at me. You can't park here. It's illegal. I'm going to have you towed. And it was bizarre because I didn't feel it. I remember thinking, wow, I'm not feeling anything. Wow, this is really weird, because it wasn't for my highest good.
Yeah.
So it was like I was watching a movie or something. Now, normally I would have picked a fight. I would have reacted, but I didn't feel anything. And it was so odd that I remember there was a pause, and then she just looked at me and she goes, why are you quiet? What? Why aren't you saying anything? And I remember saying, I don't know why I'm not saying anything. Kind of don't understand what's going on here. And what I finally said to her is, I'm so sorry that you have this frustration, but you're right. But I'm still going to go in and get the coffee. So if you told me you're totally right, you get it. I believe in you. And I went and got the coffee, but it's changing. And what happens is people love manifesting. They love affirmations. The power of manifesting is all in your energetic body. Whatever's in your energetic body, you bring more about. Mm-hmm. So if you do GCP and you're clearing out the angry lady at the parking lot, it gives you more room for that dream home or that perfect friendship that you're manifesting. So now the only thing left in your energetic body is you and what you really want in life. You start to bring in more and more of what you want in life. It's probably the number one tool that I tell people to do. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing this GCP for years, and then it morphed into doing GCP around my car, doing GCP around my house, and I brought it into spiritual clearings. I would bubble up the perpetrator and say, your energy can't leave that bubble anymore. You can't affect them. So now it's just you. Let's figure out what's in that bubble. They don't like what's in the bubble. Okay, let's figure out how to help you cross over.
Amazing. GCP. I hadn't heard that before. Do you have a guided recorded meditation that you use, or do you sit in silence when you do this type of work, especially for yourself, I would say, for manifestation?
Yeah, I sit in silence. I've gone ahead and recorded a video really explaining in much more detail how to do this, how it works, and walking people through it step by step. So I do have that. It's a free tool on my site, and I tell everybody to just try it because it can really make a difference.
All right. Well, we'll put a link to it in the show notes so people can access it. So you do help other people. You've touched on that a few times, to learn about using these tools within themselves, either for the way that you're doing it or just for their own intuitive purposes. And you've created something called the SAGE method. Can you tell us about it?
The SAGE method, much like GCP. So I'll reference that first spiritual guide I had, whom I named Big Dog. That was his nickname. And for the first, I would say 2 years, he walked me through honing my intuition. And what I wasn't aware of during those first 2 years, what I wasn't aware of was how he was walking me through a larger formula. And it was this gradual process of particular types of inner work, and then understanding how intuition works at its core, and then applying it in conjunction to how I personally am wired. He took me through those steps in like a 2-year period. And when he was done, I didn't even know we were doing it. I just thought I was going out there in the world and now helping people cross over and doing professional readings. I remember the day he stopped me and said, now I want you to put everything you did in the last 2 years together and give it to other people. And that was the birth of the Sage Method. And I was like, you clever little guy. All right, that's really clever. So I went back and said, okay, what's everything that I did? And added a few things in there that may work for other people, but not necessarily for me. And that's how the Sage Method was born.
So you get people to really hone in, tune in, and use their intuition for their greater good. It's such a beautiful, wonderful, amazing, magical tool to have in our lives, is to be aware of our intuition. Because I mean, I've done it once and it was incredible. I vividly heard, well, it was a thought that dropped into my mind, and I was like, absolutely, where did that's perfect. Where did that come from? And as quick as it came, it left. And yep. I thought, I'm going to action this one. This is brilliant. And I went, actioned it, and it all turned out perfectly. It was actually to find a tenant for our house. And the lady across the road was renovating, and we needed a tenant for 9 to 12 months while we're in Fiji. And I thought, why don't I ask her to live in our house across the road while they're renovating their house, and then she'll be able to. Genius. I don't even know where it came from, and walked straight over to her, signed the deal within like a day, and had a tenant in our house. We didn't even have to move our furniture out. They lived in our house as it was, and it was absolutely perfect. And they moved out the week that we returned, just by chance, just by absolute chance. So that was an intuitive hit. And I remember the feeling of it, because I think at the time I was reading a book about how to harness our intuition by Natalie Miles. And she was explaining that feeling of what an intuitive thought compared to a normal thought felt like. And there it was. And I've been trying to find it again. I haven't been doing enough work on it, but I have been trying to hone in on it more deeply. And I haven't had it since then as strongly as that one. So I think it's practice makes perfect, I suppose, and just putting in the time and effort to learn what the difference is between our monkey mind and our intuition.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is practice. It's using it on a regular basis. But for some people, really understanding how it works, how does it flow through? How do you turn it on? Why, how does it connect to the senses? And understanding that for some people is really helpful. And the biggest piece I would say is decluttering. For most people, the thing that's blocking them is mental, emotional, and environmental clutter. And we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be minimalists in all of those fronts, but the process of reducing the clutter in your life starts to open up that intuitive channel, healing also, and understanding our true self instead of the programmed self that we were assigned to be. That also opens up the channel, understanding how it flows. And then at the end of the course, the cool thing that I love about this course, and I tease Big Dog every now and then, is like, really? It took 2 years for me, and the course is 7 weeks. Okay. So, but it's condensed down. So in essence, I'm giving someone 7 weeks of what it took me 2 years to do. And I love that. I love it. I joke, but I do love that. At the end of the 7 weeks, there's these really fun experiments, and it's so gratifying to watch people go through these. There's a psychic experiment and a mediumship experiment, and it's so exciting to watch people go through that and get hits that they did not think that they could do. And, it's really joyous.
A friend of mine's doing one of these courses at the moment. I think she's just completed it, and she rings me mind blown just in regards
Yeah.
to what she's seen and what she's heard, and how her husband isn't a fan of it because he's feeling the energies at night in the house now as well, and feeling a bit unsettled. But she's like texting messages that have come through for me and other friends, and she's just, yeah, she said, I've turned it on and I can't turn it off, and I absolutely love it.
Yep. Yep. And that's, for me, I hear other people say that you can turn it on and off. I've never experienced that. I've never really seen any of my students say that they can turn it on or off. It's more a practice to ignoring if you don't want to be, really in tune, but it becomes a natural part of your life. And then it gets really cool, because when you start using your intuition and you got these tools and you're using it on mostly a day-to-day basis, then all of a sudden you step into this space that I call being a conscious creator. And it's so much fun. You're just constantly bringing in what you are focused on, and real fun story to kind of bring back the fact that we're full-time RVing. I guess part of full-time RVing was a large experiment on being a constant creator for me, because synchronicities are constant all day for me. And when we get on the road, and just one, there's so many, but one really fun example of being a creator, a conscious creator in your life. My partner and I were driving from one location to the next. We were bringing the RV to a fairground and we were going to park it there. On the drive, I said to him, there are these bars or pubs that are coming, that they've created this fun game of axe throwing. So like darts with a, dartboard, they've turned it into axe throwing. So you throw axes at this. And I said, that sounds like fun. I want to try it. Let's keep our eye open. Maybe we'll find a town along the way where they have one. He said, that'd be great. We land that day at the fairground. We go to bed. It was 2 days later. I wake up in the morning and my partner says, you're not going to believe this. And I said, what? He said, now we're in a fairgrounds and it's completely empty because it's off season. There's nothing going on, but the farmer's market showed up. It happens once a week. People bring fruits and vegetables. It's great. And he said, yes, but guess what's at the farmer's market? There's a mobile axe throwing unit. And I was like, there it is.
That's packed up and delivered just for you. Did it have a red bow around it, Bo?
Yeah. I put on my slippers. I got my coffee. I shuffled 100 feet over to the axe throwing booth and I just threw axes for 20 minutes and then went back and had breakfast. It was, and life can be like that. You'll have ups and downs. I still have ups and downs, but the majority of life is like that now. And it kind of turns into a little bit of an adventure.
I love that. I love that so much. I think when we live in a society where we feel so short of control at the moment, becoming a conscious creator and creating some type of experiences of our own that we have control over is absolutely what we need more of. So it
exactly. And you don't have to full-time RV to do it.
No,
you can,
or move back and forth from Fiji to Australia to every other state.
Exactly.
So I've been listening to your podcast. It's called Other Side Chats. Is that a new little thing that you've done?
It is. We kicked that off a month or two ago, and it's really fun because it's a little nerve-wracking. I'm not going to lie. Because what I'm sharing in that podcast is what I experienced during clearings, and I'm really not holding anything back. I do find that people that do the work that I do, it can sometimes be a little nerve-wracking to share those experiences because some of them are very out there, but they're very real. It's really what happened to me. Do you know what I mean? And I'm hoping for a couple of things. I'm hoping that people start to become confident in sharing those unusual experiences that happen to them as well. I'm hoping that more people step into doing crossing over work. And mostly I'm hoping that we can start to humanize spirits a little bit more. When we use the word ghost, it tends to kind of dehumanize what's involved with the spirit that you're connecting with. So
you just say at the end of every episode, ghosts are people too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's by no fault of anyone's really, but the results of the horror movies and pop culture and everything, people tend to be scared first.
Yeah.
And categorize it as a ghost when really it's like Aunt Marge that's just trying to help you out.
Yep.
So
Fascinating stuff. Absolutely fascinating stuff. I could talk to you for hours. Now, I want to know, I mean, I don't know if you've been getting messages, but obviously there is a lot going on in the world right now. What is the collective spiritual feeling of, I mean, and you don't have to answer this, is a huge question, but the collective spiritual feeling of what is going on and what's to come, I suppose, for the world?
it's a great question. 4 or 5 years ago, I asked that exact question after Election Day. And it was that this is a time where everything needs to be uncovered, brought up to the surface, and really kind of shown. It's also a time where people then have to make conscious decisions about their life, their path, and their connection to others. And then moving, and I believe we've kind of we're at the end of that second part now, where people are reevaluating their purpose, why they're here, how they feel, what they believe in. And lastly, it's going to be a new way of coming together. I don't quite see that as being complete yet, but I do see that as happening, because the arena for voices is changing and has changed, and there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of it. But we needed to almost see that sign held up in front of us to say, hey, guess what? It is this tough. And we need you to stop and take a moment to see it. We were so distracted. And we were forced to not be distracted. And we were really forced to sit with ourselves, which is really hard. Before that, we did that as a choice. And now for many of us, we didn't have a choice. We had to sit with ourselves. We had to, spend time looking in the mirror. And it's been really hard for a lot of people, but it's an opportunity that hasn't completely unfolded yet, but is now starting to head in the direction of unfolding. It's going to take a little while longer.
I asked this question too to Debbie Malone, a psychic medium in Australia, and I didn't put it in the interview. I actually cut it because it was so dark. I asked her prior to this pandemic and all of these shifts, and she answered with such a heavy, dark answer that I was like, oh, I'm scared by that. I don't want to scare all the listeners. So I removed it, but it stuck in my mind. And then obviously the last 2 years unfolded, and she was completely right in that prediction. So I'm glad to hear that you see sort of some breakthroughs coming eventually and some more lightness, which is great. My final question to you, based on the title of this podcast, it's called Things You Can't Unhear. And I just wanted to ask you, what is something that you have heard in your life that you couldn't unhear, that actually made you change the way that you lived and perceived the world?
This is probably one of the best questions I think I have ever been asked. I feel like what comes to the surface first is when I was told, we're not here to learn, we're here to experience. That was mind-blowing for me at the moment, and perspective shifting in a way that it gave me the freedom to enjoy my life both up and down. And it was life-changing.
Wow, that is life-changing. Lots to ponder, lots of big conversations. And this is why I do this show. I think it's so fascinating to talk to people like you who are really living your truth and your purpose and helping other people in this way. Thank you so much. There's so many ways that people can connect with you. What's the best way that they can find you at the moment?
The easiest way is to start with the main website at thesagemethod.com.
Beautiful.
On there, you'll find all the podcasts, all the different, you'll find that GCP,
Perfect.
tool that you can start to use right away. So you'll find all that right on there.
Perfect. I would definitely link that in the show notes. Bo, thank you for your time today. As I said, I'm fascinated by all that you do, and I think it's such important work. So thanks again.
Thank you for having me. I love what you are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and if something really profound came up for you that you want to share, let's talk about it. You can find me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And if someone you know will benefit from something that was said in this show, make sure you share it with them too. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and keep up to date with what's next. And if you can spare a few seconds, please rate and review the show on iTunes, just so other people can find us more easily and quickly. And as always, my friends, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.